There are cities where the gates never open unless you're a billionaire. The world's elite have built private escapes far from the noise, the chaos, and the complaints of ordinary life. From towns on remote islands to hidden enclaves inside megacities to underground bunkers. It sounds pretty exclusive, but you are not invited. So what's life really like inside these rich residences? Today on the Infographic Show, we'll take a look at the cities only billionaires are allowed to live in. Number 10. Kensington Palace Gardens, London, i.e. Billionaires Row. Central London is unaffordable for most, but for billionaires, it's a great place to buy a $100 million mansion they'll never use. You'll soon see that's a trend for billionaire areas. These London properties, most of which sit in Kensington Palace Gardens, Billionaires Row, are great investments for the ultra-wealthy, especially if they need to hide money from their government. And it makes sense. The average value of a property here in 2020 was £35 million. That's $47.15 million. The average property value on the second most expensive street in London, Grosvenor Square, was a measly £20.3 million. Pocket change. That's less than two-thirds the cost of a mansion in Kensington Palace Gardens. You want in? Become a diplomat. Kensington Palace Gardens hosts a lot of embassies – Russia, Israel, Lebanon, plus ambassadorial residences. The Japanese and Finnish ambassadors both live on the street. Suddenly, that perk of diplomacy looks a little more useful than just immunity from prosecution. It's also home to a veritable who's who of international oligarchs, royalty, and trust fund babies. The Sultan of Brunei, annual income $2 billion, lives here. Russian oligarch and former Chelsea Football Club owner Roman Abramovich, personal net worth of $13.5 billion, lives here, as well as John Hunt, the owner of real estate giant Foxtons. Also living there is social media personality Tamara Eccleston, the daughter of Formula One founder Bernie Eccleston, which explains how she can afford the mansion. So go ahead and blame your parents. If they'd have been obscenely rich, you too could be living in a 57-room London mansion, complete with a handbag room and $13,500 mini mansion playhouse. That is just a row in a city, though. This next place is an actual, whole, rich country. Number 9. A sunny place for shady people. That's how English novelist W. Somerset Maugham described Monaco. Living in Monaco has its perks. Besides the Mediterranean sunshine, there is no crime, no dirt, and no personal income tax. That's why a lot of billionaires and multimillionaires decided to call this tiny country home. How is there no crime? Because rich people like to protect their property, and they are willing to go to crazy lengths to do it. Monaco has the highest police officer to citizen ratio in the world, 515 police officers for 35,000 people. And each officer was well trained for at least 2 years. That's why the crime rate is hilariously low. In 2023, there were 0 homicides and 1 armed robbery, stats that sound wild if you grew up in any major city. The entire area around it is also a rich people's playground. If you get bored of partying with the movie stars nearby in Cannes or hitting the club in Saint-Tropez, you could always go on a getaway to the French countryside. But not just anyone can move there. If you weren't born in Monaco, you will need money, serious money. Local advisors say banks want to see at least 500,000 to 1 million euros in assets just to start. You'll also have to rent in the area. The bargain option is $3,200 a month for 430 square feet. That's basically 4 parking spots for the price of a car every month. Today, 7 in 10 Monaco residents are now millionaires, and almost 1 in 56 have assets of $30 million each. If you were born in Monaco, chances are you're just an average income person, and that means affording literally anything is challenging, especially housing. Property firm Civilis puts Monaco property at 50,000 euros per square meter. Central London looks cheap by comparison at 17,250. But when the median Monegasque makes just 3,300 euros a month, that math doesn't add up. But that's not a problem for the country's famous residents, including a lot of Formula One drivers like Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, and Lewis Hamilton. Monaco has been around for centuries, but other countries are trying to build billionaire cities of the future. Number 8. Saudi Arabia has been rebranding itself. After luring tourists with influencer promos and sweeping its horrific human rights record under the carpet, the country has now set its sights on a 2030 initiative. This is a full reboot of the country by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, including a completely sustainable, smart, futuristic city, NEOM. The $500 billion project is nicknamed The Line because it's designed to be ultra-narrow, just over 650 feet, If you laid the Eiffel Tower on its side inside it, it wouldn't fit. But it's over 105 miles long. The shape is meant to facilitate all the super futuristic transportation that'll make this city run. AI surveillance will keep crime at bay, robots will do all the grunt work, and there will be no cars or emissions. Which sounds very nice if it happens, because Saudi Arabia is having some issues, namely dealing with an economy that is very dependent on oil prices, and those are plummeting. Initially, MBS thought that 9 million people would be living in the line, at least 1.5 million of them settled by 2030. Now projections say more like 300,000, if that. Despite Saudi Arabia's assurances that the city of the future is forging full steam ahead, satellite views paint a very different picture, specifically a desert with very little construction. People think that only 1% of the project will actually be done by 2030. The new deadline? About 50 years out, well into the 2070s, and Saudi Arabia is very optimistic to think that we'll be around and still living in cities by then. Will NEOM at least look like the wondrous city of the future Saudi Arabia had hoped for? NEOM's vision of high-speed rail and fast underground transit is already causing major delays. It turns out that tunneling through the Arabian desert isn't easy, and the AI that was supposed to speed things up hasn't exactly delivered. Despite the setbacks, sites like NEOM Property for Sale still claim one-bedroom apartments in this city of the future will start at $10,000 per month and then probably climb much higher. So you'll pay tens of thousands to live in a desert strip waiting on futuristic transport that doesn't exist yet. Another oil-rich country near Saudi Arabia has its own ultra-wealthy developments and problems. Number 7. Dubai went from a small market and fishing town to a booming city of skyscrapers, billionaires, and that chocolate that people just won't shut up about. The city made crazy money from oil, real estate, and tourism, so much so that they didn't know what to do with it, which is why the city's artificial islands exist. Dubai built 3 Palm Islands, an archipelago of 300 islands known as the World, and is still working on a group of islands called the Universe. They were meant to be ultra-luxe private communities for the super wealthy, with their own shops and hotels. The Palm Islands have massive mansions and gated communities. Many are only accessible by yacht or helicopter, which we're guessing your parents didn't give you for your 16th birthday. And now, they sit half unfinished and mostly abandoned. Why? Well, they were built by dredging sand from the seabed, and if rising seas weren't enough, that very sand is now eroding away. Palm Jumeirah, the only successful populated island, is sinking at a rate of 0.2 inches per year. Another 353,000 to 530,000 cubic feet of sand are also displaced annually. That is up to 6 Olympic swimming pools filled with water. Apparently, it is not the greatest construction material. It also doesn't help that Dubai's insane economic boom is winding down. It was hit by the 2008 financial crisis, the 2014 drop in oil prices, and eventually a 46% drop in real estate by 2025. But things have turned around recently as more ultra-rich flood back to Dubai. In fact, from 2020 to 2023, villa prices on Palm Jumeirah jumped 146%. The basic 4-bedroom villa starts from 15 million dirhams, $4.1 million. They go up to 35 million dirhams, around $9.5 million for prime locations. But the islands are still half empty, so the next time you're struggling to find a studio under $2,000, just remember, somewhere out there, ultra-luxury homes sit vacant. And no, you can't have them. Heading further east in Asia, we find Number 6. Hong Kong's Deepwater Bay is home to Pollock's Path, the most expensive street in the world, at least according to Billionaire magazine back in 2016. And if anyone would know, it's them. In 2011, an apartment here set a record when it sold for $103 million. If you live in Deepwater Bay, your neighbors include East Asian film stars like Stephen Chow, as well as the top-level executives of International Bank HSBC. Other neighbors include Li Ka-shing, a net worth of $27.8 billion, and Chang Yu-tong and his $16.6 billion. A local real estate firm recently listed new homes in the area for 160 million Hong Kong dollars, and don't worry, with that exchange rate, it's only about 21 million US. So what happens if you can't afford to buy a house here? Well, you could just rent for anywhere between $50,000 and $90,000 per month. Now, Deepwater Bay is a community very serious about its privacy, but it's not gated. However, as you can see from the prices, it doesn't need gates to keep the 99.9% out. A lot of apartments here have private pools and incredible views, so the billionaires who live here can swim around, lounge in the sun, and look down at the rest of the peasants below them. But now let's talk about the real exclusive areas, the ones you can't even get to. Number 5. According to Fox Business, as of 2025, Fisher Island is the U.S.'s wealthiest zip code. The median home listing price is $11.9 million. But it's not just the sky-high prices keeping ordinary people out of here. It turns out, if you are not super wealthy, you can't even get to Fisher Island. The only way in is by yacht or ferry, a private ferry. Even the island's club website advertises it as an indulgent retreat for a global elite. And if you decide to pull up in your own little motorboat instead, don't. CEO of Miami-based real estate firm BH Group, Isaac Toledano says, unless you live on the island, unless you are on the guest list, you cannot come in. So, just who are the global elite living here? Over the years, Julia Roberts, Carolina Kurkova, and Oprah have purchased homes on the island. And at any given time, you won't find more than 800 families total on the 216-acre island. The island has its own school, and as with most schools in super-rich neighborhoods, it's a pretty great one. Only residents can register their kids there. The craziest part? Most residents only live there part-time, so their multi-million-dollar island home is actually their second home, or their third or fourth or 17th. That said, the ultra-rich of Fisher Island have everything they need at the Fisher Island Club, a members-only retreat that even boasts one of the U.S.'s only private beaches. The club also has rich people's favorite things, like a golf course, a marina, a spa, a salon, and tennis courts. Just make sure you don't end up playing against local resident Caroline Wozniacki, the professional tennis player and former global #1 in women's singles. Number 4. Nicknamed Billionaire Bunker, a name that doesn't exactly inspire hope for the planet's future, Indian Creek Island off Florida's coast is even more exclusive than Fisher Island. Think of the biggest stars in tech, sports, business, or entertainment. Chances are they own a mansion on this island, which is impressive because there are only 41 homes on this island. It started when Jeff Bezos bought 3 mansions right next to each other for over $230 million and made the area really prestigious. So much so that even empty lots sell for as much as $200 million. Tom Brady, Ivanka Trump, and Adriana Lima are also here, as well as Wall Street icon Carl Icahn. So, what do they love about the island? Well, privacy for one. The island is around 15 miles from Miami. Rich people can go and eat and party on South Beach and then get back home, where they don't have to see the plebes anymore. Indian Creek Island takes its residents' privacy so seriously that its motto is Protect, Serve, which makes it sound like a fortress guarded by the NYPD. It lives up to its motto with a single guarded entrance and its own private police force patrolling the land and the sea. 19 officers for just 89 residents. This isn't exactly a neighborhood watch either. The Marine Patrol is armed, and the island emphasizes its extremely strict and intense security. The entire island is 300 acres, and that includes the usual rich people's hobbies of golf, tennis, and private marinas. That's right, marinas, plural. Each home pretty much has its own. If your family can't afford a private jet, the closest you can get to Indian Creek is Miami's equivalent of celebrity home tours. Boat tours circle the island, pointing out mansions that may or may not belong to billionaires, while reminding you exactly how much you will never have. Number 3. If you've visited New York City lately, you might have noticed some super tall, skinny buildings ruining the skyline. At least some of those are part of Billionaires Row. They're located around West 57th Street, between 5th and 8th Avenues, on the southern side of Central Park. And even though almost everyone could walk by them, only the ultra-rich live within their walls. Well, kinda. We'll get to that soon. The buildings include the 3 tallest residential buildings in the world and are mostly super tall skyscrapers, classified as anything over 1,000 feet. And the apartments? Extravagantly expensive. One set a record for the most expensive apartment ever sold in New York, when Michael Dell bought the top 2 floors of 157 for just over $100 million in 2015. That record was then broken a couple of buildings over, at 220 Central Park South, when Kenneth C. Griffin bought 4 floors for $238 million in 2019. Those are pretty insane prices, considering the average Manhattan apartment today probably only costs like $30 million or something like that. I don't know. Since it's New York, there are a lot of hedge fund managers buying up the real estate on Billionaires Row, but it's not just them. There's a diverse set of people living here, like investors, and former Goldman Sachs CEOs, and mega successful business people, and Saudi billionaires, a real New York City melting pot. But there is a bit of a problem with these super impressive buildings. New Yorkers, they don't really seem to like them, and the billionaires don't really want to live in them. In 2021, Serhant Real Estate found that 44% of the 772 condos hadn't sold. That is 341 units. 2 years later, Curbed reported that only 23% were unsold. But factor in the units flipped back onto the market, and the real number hovers around 50%. And the number of actually empty apartments even higher. Like in most pricey global cities, the rich don't buy to live here. They buy to dump tens of millions of dollars, all earned completely legally and, of course, fully taxed. Our legal team has now advised us to move on. Number 2. In Atherton, California, the average home price is $15 million. 89% of the town is residential only, and most of the time it looks like a zombie apocalypse came and went. That's because Atherton has no sidewalks and only 4 streetlights, which translates to no one walking around. Who are the residents? Famous tech billionaires like Sheryl Sandberg, Eric Schmidt, and Jan Koum. So what's the deal? Does making over $100 million give you night vision and the ability to fly? No, but the lack of streetlights and sidewalks is meant to avoid the one thing billionaires hate the most: other people. Of course, it's also resulting in one of the highest pedestrian death rates in the Bay Area, more than double and triple its neighboring cities. Atherton isn't technically gated, but it's built invisible walls. The town put up legal obstacles to affordable housing, and nearly all of its 5.6 square miles is reserved for single-family homes, each on at least an acre. With California prices, that locks out 99.9% of Americans. The other 5% is parks and open space, 6% is schools, and 0% is commercial zoning. So if you don't live in Atherton, you have little to no reason to even walk there. Atherton has even closed down its Caltrain commuter train station, partly because it would require more high-density housing around it, and because they really don't want people there. That means that working-class people in the area, like police officers, may commute up to 2 hours round trip to work there, but, that's a them problem. If those rules aren't enough to keep people out, most homes are surrounded by brick walls, hedgerows taller than people, and large oak trees, sometimes all at once. If Silicon Valley execs could take out a restraining order against humanity, they would. And Atherton is the next best thing for them. Well, actually, they can take it one step further. Number 1. Billionaires in New Zealand have been coming in and building secret bunkers that no one even knew about until now. There were rumors for years of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs building sprawling underground complexes near Queenstown. But in 2020, the mayor himself, Jim Bolt, said, "To be honest, it makes me laugh because I'm not aware of any bunkers." Local architect Hamish Mir agreed. "I think it's a good story. They don't exist." They were wrong. Most of the rumors pointed to building bunkers like Rising S and California's Vivos, but checks of Imports Council approvals and customs turned up nothing, and there were no signs of local landscapers or builders working on it. When Bloomberg reported that Vivos built a 300-person bunker in New Zealand, founder Robert Vicino replied, "For security reasons, we cannot comment," which sounds like a yes. But billionaires continued to imply that it had already happened. Back in 2017, Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, the world's most sleep-inducing social networking site, told The New Yorker, "Saying you're buying a house in New Zealand is kind of a wink-wink, say no more." But in 2024, the New Zealand Herald got official confirmation. According to founder Albert Corby, his U.S. firm SAFE, strategically armored and fortified environments, has spent years equipping the ultra-rich with futuristic custom security systems. He said, "They were interested in New Zealand because of its natural beauty, isolation, and other security-related considerations, which I cannot share. We assume it has to do with being close to the Lord of the Rings filming locations." And Corby still wouldn't say where the underground shelter was exactly. But he did say a basic entry-level shelter cost at least $1 million. This supports the theory that Peter Thiel, Palantir executive and aspiring Bond villain, built a bunker on the 477-acre former sheep station that he bought. That's despite opposition from the local council. But if you are imagining these bunkers as cold, damp concrete rooms, think again. Companies like Rising S build 13,000 square foot bunkers with a bowling alley, movie theater, gym, shooting range, and greenhouse. So after billionaires have caused the world to collapse, they can have all the movie marathons and bowling practice they want. There are cities only billionaires can live in, but even they can't compare to history's ultimate tycoon. Watch The Richest Man That Ever Lived to see the fortune no one has ever matched, or click on this video instead.